June 1989. A countryside estate in Gloucestershire. Champagne glasses everywhere, crystal catching candlelight, laughter bouncing off ancient walls, 200 guests celebrating Annabel Goldsmith's 40th birthday like nothing could ever go wrong. Then Diana Spencer walked through the crowd. No smile, no small talk, eyes locked on one woman. Camilla Parker Bowles turned, champagne glass frozen mid-air, and everyone nearby felt the temperature drop 10 degrees. Diana closed the distance. No hesitation. 6 words delivered so quietly only Camilla heard them, but everyone saw what happened next. Camilla's face drained. Her hand trembled. The glass tilted. Witnesses watched Diana walk away without looking back, leaving Camilla standing there like she'd been shot. Charles arrived 90 seconds too late. By midnight, Camilla had fled the party. By morning, the affair that didn't exist had been exposed by a princess who refused to stay silent. This is the story of 6 words that changed royal history. Between 1986 and 1989, Diana Spencer perfected 2 versions of herself. Public Diana, the most photographed woman on earth, beloved globally, the people's princess who could light up a room just by entering it. Private Diana, a wife studying phone bills at 2 a.m., circling the same number that appeared again and again. Camilla Parker Bowles. The name showed up everywhere once you knew to look for it. Late-night calls when Charles thought she was asleep. Weekend hunting trips to Balmoral, where Camilla always seemed to be invited. Casual mentions of an old friend, who Charles spoke about with a softness he never used with Diana. By 1987, Diana wasn't guessing anymore. She was connecting dots. Harry had been born in 1984. The marriage was already fracturing then, but Diana had hoped motherhood might anchor things. Instead, Charles grew more distant, more secretive, more careful. Palace staff walked on eggshells around her, their eyes carrying a pity she hated more than the truth itself. Because they knew, everyone knew. The jewelry Charles gave Camilla, Diana found the receipts. The intimate nicknames they used for each other, Gladys and Fred, cute, nauseating. The realization hit her slowly, then all at once. She wasn't losing her mind. She was married to a man in love with someone else. Diana faced a choice most people never have to make. Accept the humiliation quietly, like generations of royal wives before her, or fight back. Here's what nobody understood about Diana. She wasn't raised royal. She didn't inherit centuries of keep calm and carry on in her blood. She was human, wounded, furious, and increasingly she was calculating. She didn't want a divorce, not yet. She wanted Camilla to back down, to disappear, to leave her marriage alone. That required something the palace had never seen from a princess: confrontation. Sometimes you have to become what they fear. Charles and Camilla's history went back further than Diana's entire adult life. They'd met in the early 1970s at a polo match, young, connected, perfect for each other by aristocratic standards. The relationship was real, serious, heading somewhere. Then Charles joined the Royal Navy, and when he returned in 1973, Camilla had married Andrew Parker Bowles. The official story? Just old friends now. The real story, according to people close to both of them, Camilla never stopped calling. Diana walked into this in 1981, 20 years old, believing she was entering a fairy tale. The wedding was watched by 750 million people worldwide. Diana became an instant global icon, young, beautiful, impossibly photogenic. The dress, the kiss on the balcony, the crowds chanting her name. What the cameras didn't show, Camilla in the crowd at St. Paul's Cathedral, watching with a knowing smile that Diana would spend years trying to decode. The palace operated on a simple principle: ignore what you can't fix. Palace staff knew about Charles and Camilla. They'd known for years. They protected the secret with practiced efficiency, teaching Diana through silence that some things weren't discussed. You smiled for photographers. You attended charity galas. You produced heirs. You didn't ask questions about phone calls or weekend trips or why your husband seemed happiest when you weren't around. Diana was becoming the most famous woman on earth while her marriage crumbled in private. Magazines called her a fashion icon. Children waved flags when she visited hospitals. The public adored her with an intensity that made Charles uncomfortable and made Camilla irrelevant, at least publicly. But in the rooms that mattered, in the private phone calls and country weekends, Camilla remained, constant, present, the real relationship. The help always knows first. They see everything, they say nothing. Until one of them, years later, would confirm what Diana already knew. Camilla had never left. Spring 1989. An invitation arrived at Kensington Palace. Annabel Goldsmith's 40th birthday party. June, Gloucestershire estate. Diana held the cream-colored card, reading between the elegant lines. She made 2 phone calls. First, to a trusted friend who confirmed, yes, Camilla would be there. Second, to accept the invitation. Decision point. She could avoid the party, avoid the confrontation, avoid the whole mess. That's what the palace would prefer. That's what Charles would prefer. That's what every royal wife before her had done. Turned the other cheek, maintained dignity, suffered silently. Diana studied herself in the mirror. 28 years old, global icon, trapped wife. She was tired of avoiding things. She started preparing. Not her dress, she'd figure that out later. She prepared her words, 6 of them. She tried different combinations, practiced in front of the mirror when she was alone, refined the phrasing until it was sharp enough to cut, but simple enough to remember. 6 words that would let Camilla know the game was over, that Diana knew, that she wasn't going to be the fool everyone expected her to be. She practiced every day for weeks, in the bathroom, in her bedroom, in the car. 6 words. The sentence had to be perfect, calm, certain, lethal. No shouting, no hysteria. Just truth, delivered with the confidence of someone who'd stopped pretending not to know. Diana was at the peak of global adoration in 1989, photographed everywhere, beloved by millions. But privately, she was desperate, isolated, fighting a battle most people couldn't imagine. The interesting part, she didn't tell anyone her plan. Not her closest friends, not her confidants, not even the people who knew about Charles and Camilla and sympathized with her. This was hers. Solo. The morning of the party, she set the invitation on her vanity, next to a champagne glass from a previous event, a reminder of what she was walking into. Revenge served cold requires precise measurements. June 1989, evening. Diana drove herself to the Gloucestershire estate. The party was already in full swing when she arrived. 200 guests, crystal chandeliers, an orchestra playing something classical and forgettable. Champagne everywhere, trays moving through crowds, laughter bouncing off wood-paneled walls that had witnessed 3 centuries of aristocratic secrets. Diana entered and immediately shifted into tactical mode. She wasn't there to socialize. She scanned the room with the focus of someone executing a plan they'd rehearsed 100 times. 30 seconds. That's how long it took her to spot Camilla near the terrace doors, holding a champagne glass, mid-conversation with a group Diana didn't recognize. Camilla looked comfortable, confident, like she belonged. Diana was known for her poise. Every photograph proved it. But tonight, people who knew her noticed something different, sharper, more focused. She moved through the crowd with purpose, accepting greetings but not stopping, her eyes tracking Camilla's position like a sniper calculating angles. Charles arrived separately, fashionably late, unaware his wife was hunting the woman he loved. He entered from the east entrance. Diana watched him from across the room. He didn't even look for her first. He looked for Camilla. The party flowed around them, conversations about horses, politics, the upcoming social season, normal aristocratic chatter. Nobody knew they were witnessing the setup for a confrontation that would echo through royal history. Diana accepted a champagne glass from a passing server, not because she wanted it, but because holding it gave her hands something to do. She positioned herself with clear sightlines to Camilla while maintaining the appearance of casual mingling. Camilla saw Diana at some point. Their eyes met across the room. Camilla's smile faltered for half a second before she recovered. She said something to the people she was with and turned toward the powder room corridor. Trying to leave early, maybe. Trying to avoid the awkwardness. Diana watched her go. Then she followed. Predator and prey both know the dance. Diana had been studying Camilla for months. Not just her relationship with Charles, her patterns, her habits, where she went when she needed air at parties, how often she smoked, when she excused herself for bathroom breaks. Diana had become an expert at reading people since marrying into the royals. It was a survival skill. Watch faces, track movements, understand who holds power and how they use it. According to people close to Diana, she'd spent entire evenings at previous events just observing Camilla, learning her. The way she laughed, head tilted slightly left. The way she touched Charles's arm when she spoke to him, brief, familiar, intimate. The way she excused herself from groups, always politely, always with a reason people accepted without question. Camilla was comfortable in these spaces. She'd been navigating aristocratic parties since childhood. She knew how to disappear into powder rooms, terraces, private corners without drawing attention. Diana had become expert at reading people. It's how she'd survived the palace. Tonight, she used those skills. At 11:30 p.m., Camilla stepped away from her group near the terrace, heading toward the corridor that led to the powder rooms. Diana waited 30 seconds, long enough that it wouldn't look like she was following, short enough that she wouldn't lose her. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, smiling at guests, nodding at familiar faces, giving no indication she was executing the plan she'd rehearsed for weeks. The music grew quieter as she entered the corridor, muffled conversation and orchestra strings replaced by the sound of her heels on marble. Charles was still in the main room. Diana had seen him from across the party. He was watching Camilla too, from a distance, with a look Diana had learned to recognize. But he didn't follow her to the corridor. He didn't know his wife was about to do what he'd probably feared for years. The watched never notice when two sets of eyes follow them. Diana reached the corridor, empty, quiet, perfect. 11:47 p.m. The hallway outside the powder rooms, suddenly impossibly empty, like everyone had instinctively cleared the space for what was about to happen. Diana and Camilla alone for the first time in years, maybe ever, really. They'd been at the same events dozens of times, but always with crowds, always with Charles or other people as buffers. Never like this, never cornered. Camilla turned when she heard footsteps, saw Diana, forced a smile. The polite, practiced smile aristocrats use when they're caught off guard but can't show it. "Diana," she said, voice steady. "Lovely party, isn't it?" Diana didn't return the smile. She stepped closer, not aggressive but deliberate. The space between them shrank to less than 3 feet, close enough that Camilla could smell Diana's perfume, something floral, expensive. Close enough that Diana could see the micro-calculations happening behind Camilla's eyes. Camilla's champagne glass was still in her hand, condensation beating on the crystal. 2 guests had seen them enter the corridor. Neither heard what was said. The music from the main room was muffled but present. Strings, laughter, the ambient sound of 200 people who had no idea what was happening 20 feet away. Diana held her own champagne glass, the stem cool against her palm. She wasn't nervous anymore. She'd been nervous for weeks. Now she was just certain. Camilla tried again. "I was just—" "Don't," Diana said. The word hung there. Camilla's mouth closed. Her practiced social mask flickered. For a second, Diana saw something real underneath. Awareness, maybe. Recognition that this wasn't going to be a polite exchange about weather or charity events or who looked lovely tonight. Camilla had probably been dreading this moment for years, wondering when Diana would finally confront her, wondering what she'd say, wondering if Charles had prepared her. He hadn't. Small talk is for people with nothing real to say. Diana leaned in slightly, close enough that only Camilla would hear, and she delivered the 6 words she'd practiced 1,000 times. The exact phrasing has been reconstructed from multiple sources close to Diana. Different versions exist. Royal biographers have debated the precise wording for years. Some claim she said, "I know what you're doing, Camilla." 6 words. Perfect, simple, devastating. Others insist it was slightly different. "Please don't treat me like an idiot." Also 6 words. Also perfectly calibrated to cut. What everyone agrees on, the tone. Quiet, lethal, certain. Not a question, not an accusation that invited debate, a statement, a declaration. Diana wasn't asking for an explanation. She wasn't demanding Camilla confess. She was letting Camilla know the performance was over. The secret everyone had been protecting? Diana knew, and she was done pretending not to. Camilla's reaction was witnessed by the 2 guests who'd seen them enter the corridor. They couldn't hear the words, but they saw what happened after. Camilla's face drained of color. Not dramatically, she didn't gasp or stumble, but the blood left her face in a way you can't fake. Her hand shook. The champagne glass tilted, liquid catching the hallway light, almost spilling. She didn't speak. Couldn't speak, maybe, or knew that anything she said would make it worse. Diana didn't wait for a response. That was the genius of it. She delivered her sentence, held Camilla's gaze for exactly 3 seconds, then turned and walked away. No shouting, no scene, no drama that would give palace handlers something to spin or deny. Just 6 words and the truth they carried. She walked back into the main party, accepted compliments on her dress, danced with guests, laughed at jokes, performed the role of princess so perfectly that anyone watching would have assumed she'd just returned from a pleasant conversation. Meanwhile, Camilla stood frozen in that corridor, champagne glass trembling in her hand, facing the reality that her secret was out. Truth needs no negotiation. By 11:58 p.m., Camilla had left the party. Staff saw her retrieve her coat and exit without saying goodbye to the hostess. Diana stayed until past 1 a.m. Camilla's car pulled out of the estate's driveway at 11:58 p.m. Staff confirmed it. She didn't say goodbye to Annabel Goldsmith, didn't finish her champagne, just grabbed her coat from the attendant and left like someone fleeing a crime scene. Charles searched for her 20 minutes later, couldn't find her, asked around. Nobody knew where she'd gone. One guest mentioned seeing her head toward the powder rooms. Another said she'd looked upset. Diana was in the main ballroom when Charles found her. She was mid-conversation with a group near the orchestra, laughing at something someone had said, looking radiant. Charles pulled her aside. "Have you seen Camilla?" he asked, trying to sound casual but failing. Diana looked at him with a calmness that must have scared him. "No," she said, "I haven't." Then she returned to her conversation. Public appearance. Nothing had happened. The princess was glowing, gracious, beloved. Private reality. Charles was panicking. He left the party soon after, drove back to wherever he was staying, tried calling Camilla. According to friends close to Camilla, she called him around 1 a.m. from her home, still shaken. "She knows," Camilla told him. "She knows everything." The legendary detail varies depending on who's telling the story, but the core is consistent. Diana's 6 words broke something. Not the affair, that would continue, quieter, more carefully hidden, but the power dynamic. For years, Camilla had existed in the shadows, protected by silence and complicity. Diana's confrontation dragged her into the light, made her visible, made her exposed. Charles didn't comfort Camilla the way she probably expected. According to some accounts, he was furious, not at Camilla, but at Diana. How dare she confront his friend at a party? How dare she make a scene? Except Diana hadn't made a scene. That's what made it so devastating. 6 words in a hallway. No witnesses to the actual conversation. No drama the palace could spin. Just truth delivered so cleanly it left no room for denial. Exposure changes who protects whom. Within 48 hours, palace aides were in damage control mode. The weeks after the confrontation revealed something interesting. Charles became more careful. Still saw Camilla. Diana had no illusions about ending the affair with one sentence, but the meetings became more discreet. Fewer public events where they'd both appear. Fewer casual mentions of old friends. Diana had drawn a line, and Charles, for all his entitlement, understood what crossing it more openly would cost him. Diana gained something she'd never had in the marriage: power through explicit knowledge. Before, everyone had maintained plausible deniability. The affair was hidden enough that pointing it out made you the problem, made you hysterical, paranoid, ungracious. After her confrontation with Camilla, the pretense became harder to maintain. Diana had named it, had looked Camilla in the eye and made it real. Public records show 1989 marked a shift in Diana's confidence. Photographs from that period capture something different in her bearing. She stood taller, spoke more directly in interviews, engaged with causes she cared about with less concern for palace approval. Palace aides noticed. She was becoming harder to control. The shy girl who'd married Charles in 1981 was gone. The woman who'd confronted Camilla at a party was someone new. Camilla went mostly silent for months. Fewer society appearances, fewer mentions in gossip columns. She'd been exposed, And while the public didn't know the specifics yet, she knew Diana could reveal them anytime she wanted. According to one legendary account, Diana told a close friend, "I said what needed saying." Not with triumph, just with the quiet certainty of someone who'd finally spoken a truth that had been suffocating her. The 6 words didn't end the affair. That's important to understand. Charles and Camilla would continue their relationship. Eventually, decades later, they'd marry. But Diana's confrontation changed the terms. She'd refused to be the silent victim. She'd made Camilla face her. She'd drawn a line and forced everyone to acknowledge it existed. Some battles aren't won, they're declared. But secrets this big don't disappear. They adapt, hide better, wait for the moment when everyone stops watching. Historical context matters here. 1989 was the turning point in the royal marriage, though the public wouldn't fully understand that for years. Diana had demonstrated she wouldn't play the role written for her. She wasn't going to suffer quietly like generations of royal wives who'd endured affairs, disappointment, and public humiliation while maintaining perfect smiles. She was human, wounded, and increasingly willing to fight back. The confrontation at that party became a template. Diana learned that speaking truth, even quietly, even in a hallway with no witnesses, changed things, shifted power. Camilla had been comfortable in her position as Charles's old friend. That comfort died the moment Diana looked her in the eye and delivered those 6 words. Suddenly, Camilla was exposed, not publicly yet, but privately, where it mattered. Charles was caught between 2 impossible positions. Tradition demanded he maintain his marriage, produce heirs, perform duty. His heart, according to everyone who knew him, had always belonged to Camilla. Diana's confrontation made hiding that impossible. She'd named it, made it explicit, forced him to acknowledge what he'd been pretending didn't exist. The public narrative and private war ran parallel. Newspapers showed the people's princess, beloved, gracious, radiant. Behind palace walls, Diana was becoming something else, the warrior princess, the woman who'd confronted her husband's mistress and refused to apologize, the woman who'd decided she'd rather be honest than comfortable. Verified milestones tell the rest. Official separation announced in 1992. Divorce finalized in 1996. But the seeds were planted in 1989, in a hallway at a party, when Diana delivered 6 words that changed everything and nothing. The affair continued. The marriage ended. But Diana never regretted the confrontation. Years later, in therapy sessions that would eventually leak to biographers, Diana reflected on that moment. "I needed her to know I knew," she said. "I needed to stop being the fool everyone assumed I was." Not about ending the affair, about refusing to be invisible. The threat of truth is sharper than truth itself, and truth, once spoken, can't be unspoken. The 1990s brought Diana everything she'd never wanted: public triumph and private isolation. Her popularity soared globally. The more the public learned about her struggles, the more they loved her. She became the people's princess, not despite her pain, but because of it. She was human in ways royals weren't supposed to be: vulnerable, honest, real. The palace never forgave her for confronting Camilla. Not officially, of course. No one said it directly. But Diana felt it in every interaction: the careful distance, the lack of support, the quiet ways she was excluded from decisions and conversations. She'd broken an unspoken rule. She'd made private matters explicit. She'd refused to pretend. Royal marriages could endure anything except honesty. Public support meant nothing when you were alone at Kensington Palace at 2 a.m., knowing your husband was with the woman you'd confronted years ago. Diana's victory felt like loneliness. She'd spoken her truth, drawn her line, made her stand, and it had cost her everything except her dignity. The affair continued. Charles and Camilla were careful, quiet, but they never stopped. Diana's 6 words had changed the power dynamic, but not the reality. According to those close to Diana, she told her therapist years later, "I'd do it again." Not because it changed Charles, not because it ended the affair, but because it changed her. She'd stopped being a victim. She'd looked her husband's mistress in the eye and refused to stay silent. The 6 words became Diana's line in the sand. She'd spoken, she couldn't unspeak. Every decision after that, the interviews, the separation, the divorce, the way she rebuilt her life around causes she cared about, flowed from that moment in 1989 when she decided truth mattered more than comfort. You can win battles and still lose wars. Diana knew that. But she also knew some battles are worth fighting, even when you know you'll lose. Truth-tellers rarely get invited back. But Diana changed what silence meant for women everywhere. Not just royal women, all women watching her refuse to disappear. Diana died in Paris. The world mourned. Camilla attended the funeral. Guilt, described by those who knew her as overwhelming. The woman Diana had confronted 8 years earlier in a hallway now stood among mourners, facing the consequence of choices that had destroyed a marriage and contributed to the tragedy. Charles and Camilla would eventually marry in 2005, 8 years after Diana's death, 16 years after the confrontation at that party. The legendary status of the 6 words grew over time. Multiple biographers confirmed the moment happened. The specific wording varies depending on sources. "I know what you're doing, Camilla," or "Please don't treat me like an idiot." But the core remains consistent. Diana confronted Camilla. She delivered 6 words. Camilla fled. The power dynamic shifted. The story became symbol. What made it powerful wasn't just the confrontation, it was what it represented. A woman refusing to be silent. Diana could have avoided Camilla at that party, could have maintained the fiction everyone else was comfortable with. Instead, she walked up to her husband's mistress and spoke truth so clearly there was no room for misunderstanding. Cultural impact matters. "I know what you're doing" became a modern feminist moment. Not because Diana was perfect, she wasn't. Not because her life ended happily, it didn't. But because she demonstrated that some truths need to be spoken even when speaking them costs everything. Women everywhere recognize themselves in her story. The betrayed wife. The woman everyone expects to stay quiet. The one who finally says, "Enough." Camilla won the marriage. She got Charles in the end, became his wife, eventually became queen consort. But Diana won history. Her story outlived her. The image of her confronting Camilla in that hallway became legend. The 6 words became shorthand for refusing to be a victim. Photographs from 1989 parties occasionally surface, Diana and Camilla both visible in frames, careful distance between them, both holding champagne glasses, both knowing what the other knows. Legends outlive relationships. The champagne glass sits in a private collection now, a relic of the night everything changed. Return to the champagne glass, crystal catching light, condensation beating on the stem, lipstick mark on the rim. In 1989, it was a prop at a party, one of hundreds circulating through crowds, anonymous, functional. After Diana's confrontation with Camilla, it became something else, a marker, a symbol. The object Camilla held when her world tilted. The object Diana carried when she walked away from that hallway, having spoken the truth everyone else refused to acknowledge. Objects transform through the stories they witness. The champagne glass went from celebration to confrontation to historical artifact. It represents the night Diana stopped being the victim everyone expected her to be and became the woman who refused silence. It represents the cost of truth, the isolation, the exile from family, the price Diana paid for refusing to pretend. Diana's 6 words created a template for confronting power. Not with violence, not with public scenes, just with truth, delivered so cleanly it cuts through every defense. "I know what you're doing" contains no aggression, no accusation that requires proof, just certainty, just knowledge made explicit, just the end of pretense. Public remembrance focuses on Diana's courage, the fairy tale princess who became real, the woman who suffered but refused to suffer silently. Private cost is remembered too, the divorce, the isolation, the way she rebuilt her life around humanitarian work because her family had exiled her from everything else. She spoke her truth and paid for it, but she never stopped speaking. The moral isn't complicated. Sometimes you have to speak truth even when it costs everything. Sometimes silence is more expensive than honesty. Sometimes looking someone in the eye and saying 6 simple words is the bravest thing you can do. The champagne glass still exists somewhere, empty now, a relic. The lipstick mark, long faded. But what it represents remains. The moment a woman refused to be invisible. The night a princess became a warrior. The 6 words that changed nothing and everything. She didn't win the war, but she refused to lose silently. Some words can't be unspoken. Make sure they're worth it.